The new C&O is a go. Hear from Admiral Derek Cottle, the 34th Chief of Naval Operations, as he takes command. Plus, the Pentagon restricts Ukraine's use of US missiles against Russia. What's behind the decision? And what's in a name? Why the largest department in the executive branch could be pulling the trigger on a name change. Hello and welcome to Weapons and Warfare, a show made for people who want to know more about our national defense. Our goal here is to help you have an informed conversation about what's happening with America's military. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and we start this week with a look inside a new facility from an emerging player in a very competitive market. It's a sound that's almost immediately identifiable, the personal drone. And for more than a decade, their numbers in the US have exploded. From hobbyists to YouTubers to news outlets and beyond, there are nearly 1 million drones in the skies of America. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, there are a total of 822,039 drones registered to commercial and recreational pilots. But it wasn't until Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine that the idea of taking these nimble, dependable, and most of all, affordable flying machines into combat became a widely accepted idea. For more than 3 years, American military leadership and entrepreneurs alike have been thinking about how best to arm American troops with drones of their own. At first glance, it might seem like supply should not be an issue, but the truth is an estimated 90% of the drones operating in the United States are Chinese made, something that, pardon the pun, doesn't fly with American military leadership. Enter Performance Drone Works. This American innovator recently opened a brand new building designed specifically to speed up the development and production of PDW's C100 Multi-Mission UAS and the AMFPV attritable munition. The 90,000 square foot facility, dubbed Drone Factory 1, is built to keep up with the growing demand from the Pentagon. I recently had the chance to visit with Ryan Gury, a friend of the show as well as PDW's CEO and co-founder, about why now is the right time to undertake a project like this.
Our thesis is that there is a massive generational change occurring on the battlefield. Legacy U.S. primes, really cannot win today's wars, and there is a massive shift occurring towards attributable robotics, which is what we specialize in. And we leverage commercial technologies, much like you see in the Eastern War in Ukraine or, with Russia's use of the Shahed, to develop and mass manufacture combat systems, for tomorrow's warfighters.
And when you say you leverage commercial technologies, what does that mean? And how does that allow you to, move quicker and iterate faster and all of the things that the DoD is looking for? How does that all, come into play by you being able to take advantage of commercial technologies? What doors does that open?
Yeah, essentially, commercial technologies have reached such a point of maturity that you can develop weapons and scale them. And that's what we're seeing on the front lines in Europe. Now, 70 to 80% of all strikes are being delivered by a drone the size of a dinner plate using parts from Amazon and Alibaba. And they outperform legacy systems like the Switchblade.
The Switchblade being an AeroVironment loitering munition. That was the first specific system chosen for the Pentagon's replicator program, but it's the nimbleness of Ukraine's innovators and the speed of technological growth that's pushing Gury and his coworkers. When you talk about scale and, the US needing to make millions of these and your facility will be able to make 60,000. Do you imagine that this is the first of several facilities that PDW will have, or is PDW part of a larger picture of other manufacturers all contributing to that millions? What's kind of your, crystal ball insight into that?
Well, both. There's room for a few PDWs out there. And, the reason why we call it Drone Factory 1 is inferring that there'll be another.
Mm.
We believe that there needs to be an arsenal of small robotics on the front lines. There are a few companies, only a handful though, and they're still early stage that are aligned with us and in the style in which you make robotics, and we think that they're going to be greatly successful as well. I think what we're after is the end of these exquisite systems. We want to see a marketplace where users can rate and buy and choose what they want. We want to remove the red tape and these long programs of records.
At this point, you might be wondering why Northern Alabama for this venture. For Gury and his team, the city's history in missile production and rocketry makes it an ideal place for PDW as it works to shape the future of unmanned technology. The location of the facility in Huntsville, Alabama, obviously not by chance. There's, the location to different military facilities in the area. How does that going to help with the rapid iteration and the feedback loop with your closest customers?
When we started the company in Manhattan, which was no place for a defense company, we kind of looked across America as a great home, and we thought Huntsville was just perfect. We can find big fields to fly. Everyone is supportive of what we do. Culturally, it's wonderful, and it's really cost efficient.
According to the company's press release, with the establishment of Drone Factory 1, PDW is introducing more than 500 new jobs in the greater Huntsville area and spurring an economic impact of more than $81 million per year. If you want to hear my entire conversation with Ryan, you can find that a little later this week on the Weapons and Warfare YouTube channel. Okay, folks, I'm joined now by senior producer and Air Force veteran Brett Baker for some headlines you may have missed. Brett, you feeling any better this week? I know last week you had some allergies you were dealing with.
Yeah, I feel better. I don't sound a whole lot better, but I feel fine. It's just, my voice is not great. Probably going to Nebraska, Cincinnati at Arrowhead.
Go Big Red.
Didn't really help with the recuperation process. But, these are the pains you got to pay to be a fan.
Absolutely. First world problems. All right, let's get to those headlines. 185 days after Admiral Lisa Franchetti was relieved of command, the Navy has its new Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Daryl Cottle, a longtime submarine commander with 40 years of experience, is officially the Navy's 34th CNO.
Those who know me best know that I am not one for standing by idle. I'm chomping at the bit to get after the work that lies ahead, to ensure that our Navy remains and forever will be the most dominant, lethal, and credible maritime fighting force the world has ever known.
Admiral Cottle is now part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and acts as an advisor to the President, the National Security Council, and the Homeland Security Council, and the Secretary of Defense. Brett, with the prospect of a potential war in the Pacific with China, not a bad idea to have a submariner leading the Department of the Navy.
No, that's a great point. And for sure, the man has
the Chief of Naval Operations. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, those are the ones you don't want to. That's how you get emails.
Yep, exactly.
No, he's a man with a wealth of experience, probably more than ready for the job. He expressed that in his swearing-in speech, and I think it's a good choice. If they had to make a change, which we can debate the merits of that later, I think this man is a good choice for that position.
The Pentagon has been quietly blocking Ukraine from using U.S.-made long-range Army tactical missile systems, or ATACMS, to strike targets inside Russia, limiting Kyiv's ability to employ these weapons in its defense against Moscow's invasion. The Wall Street Journal reported in late August on this subject, citing U.S. officials. The news came as U.S. President Donald Trump has grown more frustrated publicly over the 3-year-old war and his inability to secure a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Brett, Biden had put restrictions on Ukraine when it came to using U.S. weapons. Then he lifted them right before leaving office. So this restriction is sort of a return to normal for Ukraine.
Right, which I think is unfortunate. I really think that it's important that they be allowed to have the freedom to use those munitions in the way that they best see fit. This is the kind of situation where whenever you have an advantage, you need to press it. You need to seize on it. And if you're tying a hand behind their back, that is not helping the cause.
Right. Ukraine has developed some of their own long-range options like the Flamingo and the Neptune missile. They're trying to put those into mass production. Obviously, the U.S. has a lot more weapons than Ukraine does, and Mr. Trump, President Trump, did put out on Truth Social that it's almost impossible to win a war if you don't strike your enemy where they live. Seeming to acknowledge the fact that Ukraine needs to be able to hit Russians in Russia. So maybe this is a negotiating, like a bargaining chip that he's able to play against Putin if the ceasefire deal doesn't come to fruition. It hasn't yet, so we'll see how this goes. President Donald Trump is thinking about renaming the Department of Defense. Trump has mused about renaming the DoD to its original name, the Department of War. The name was changed in 1949.
Department of Defense, we won the World War I, World War II. It was called the Department of War. And to me, that's really what it is. It's defense is a part of that. But I have a feeling we're going to be changing. I'm talking to the people. Everybody likes that.
Trump said the previous name had a stronger sound, and there might be an update on the potential name change over the next couple of weeks. And by the time this segment airs, Brett, I suppose we may have a Department of War, which, honestly may be a more apt name of the department. Not all of the actions taken by the DoD are strictly defensive in nature, after all.
Right. But I do think that the name change, when that did occur, speaks more to the time and place where we are. It's about national defense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about national war, right? Yes, war happens. Yes, we have partaken in those. But I think the time and place have changed. And why? Like, really, the big question is just why? It doesn't affect anything. So, yeah, it's just another one of those things. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I can see that. One of the things that, when I started hearing about this from a logistics perspective, like think of all of the signs, branding, like, from a marketing perspective, all of everything that says DOD will have to be changed. Like everything from cards to signs to websites, letterheads, all
lecterns.
So that's
everything.
That's going to be a lot of time and effort and energy. So, yeah, obviously this idea is being criticized by folks out there. There's arguments on both sides. I understand both sides of it. So maybe we have a Department of War right now, Brett. Maybe we don't. We record this obviously before it publishes. So I guess tell us in the comments section, folks, if we have a Department of War yet or not. Brett, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Next time, we'll be there.
Okay, so record scratch, interrupt the program real quick. If you're paying attention to headlines, obviously you know that President Donald Trump did sign an executive order allowing Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to refer to himself as the Secretary of War and refer to the DoD as the Department of War. So we will have much more on this next week, but obviously wanted to update you because we recorded that last headline before the executive order was signed, and then the executive order was signed. So now you have the most up-to-date information possible.
Imagine a vehicle that combines the speed of an aircraft with the ease of a boat. It features 3 modes: float, foil, and fly. This winged passenger ferry is called the Paladin and could revolutionize coastal transportation or serve as a new type of warship. And that's why it's our weapon of the week. It looks like something someone in the 1960s might have imagined about the way people would travel in the year 2000. 25 years on, and this winged passenger ferry gliding over the surface of Narragansett Bay could be the future of coastal transportation or a new option for military commanders operating in the littorals of the Pacific. Its maker, Regent Craft, is betting on both. 12 propellers line the 65-foot wingspan of the Paladin, a sleek ship with an airplane's nose. Regent Craft is testing a prototype of this vessel that it calls a sea glider, a hybrid between a boat and an aircraft that exploits a physics phenomenon called ground effect, the same cushion of air that pelicans and seagulls ride when skimming ocean waves.
So right now, when seaplanes and flying boats try to take off from the water, they're slapping the surface of the water. They have very poor wave tolerance, and that's why they're constrained to inland waterways, lakes and rivers. Sea gliders, by contrast, have a hydrofoil. That's an underwater wing. We're taking that from the sailing world, the racing world, America's Cup and Sail GP. These underwater wings, called hydrofoils, lift the sea glider out of the surface of the water, giving us 5 feet of wave tolerance. So that's basically a hurricane, allowing us to accelerate up to about 50 to 60 miles an hour before we take off on the wing.
The commercial version is designed to travel at 180 miles an hour, making it possible to complete missions that last an hour on battery power, tapping 7 Teslas worth of batteries on board. The vessel operates in waves up to 5 feet high for both takeoffs and landings, making it ideal for routes connecting coastal destinations as well as overwater routes linking islands.
We also have extreme interest on the defense side. We have $15 million in contracts with the U.S. Marine Corps today. We are rapidly approaching larger programs, acquisition programs, and working not only in the U.S. but with our allied Department of Defenses and Ministry of Defenses on incorporating sea gliders into their defense and national security strategies.
Regent is working with the Corps to repurpose the same wing-in ground effect vessels for island-hopping troops in the Pacific. Those vessels would likely trade electronic battery power for jet fuel to cover longer journeys. And the Marines are not the only ones interested. Regent has also built partnerships with the U.S. Special Operations Command and the U.S. Coast Guard Research and Development Center.
In less than 5 years, we have our full-scale prototype on the water with safety systems sufficient to take on human crew. I mean, literally myself was on that sea glider earlier today. And we are imminent within a couple years now of our first deliveries to both commercial and defense customers. 2027, sea gliders will be in operation in multiple places in the world.
So we're starting to get some clarity on the fate of the Colorado Air National Guardsmen that we profiled back in episode 78, and that's the subject of this week's Comms Check. It now looks like the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act that calls for the transfer of nearly 600 Air Guard space professionals to the Space Force is likely to happen. That's after senators in the states most likely to be affected backed off their calls to stop the move. Senators John Hickenlooper of Colorado and Mike Crapow of Idaho proposed transferring guardsmen with space missions to the active duty Space Force as early as October, a move that's still facing strong opposition from governors and lawmakers advocating for a Space National Guard. The amendments allow a one-time voluntary transfer of the guardsmen while ensuring governors are consulted. The National Guard Association continues to advocate for a Space National Guard and the repeal of the controversial transfer proposal, which could lead to talent loss. The Air Force has detailed units set for transfer starting October 1st, 2025, while the Space Force is developing a part-time service model that may differ from traditional structures.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, that's going to just about do it for us this week at Weapons and Warfare. If you like what you heard and you want to help us in our mission to make stories of military matters and national defense more accessible for the average person, please like and subscribe to our social media feeds and download the Straight Arrow News app today. For my wrap this week, I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about the issue of gun violence in the United States. Before you label me as just another liberal reporter who doesn't know anything about the subject, though, I learned how to shoot with my granddad's Ruger 1022 when I was 8 years old, and he taught me a healthy respect for firearms. My dad and I used to spend hours at the range or in a field plinking, or preparing for the zombie apocalypse, as we used to joke, and today I still own guns. So you can believe me when I say I support the Second Amendment. But I also grew up in the age of school shooter drills. When I was a freshman and sophomore in high school, I went to a school that was very close to Columbine High School. I actually knew Rachel Scott, one of the victims in that massacre. Since then, there have been more school shootings than I care to count in this country. It's happened so much that we can predict the reactions. Republicans say it's a mental health issue. Democrats say it's because of quick and easy access to guns. And in the middle are people screaming for change. Not much has changed, though. After the assault weapons ban expired in the early 2000s, the only major restriction on firearms came with President Trump's bump stock ban in his first term, but even that was overturned. Congress keeps cutting funding for mental health, which certainly is not helping the problem. But last week, I was encouraged to hear President Trump speaking about the need for more mental health resources. He acknowledged the U.S. has far too many active shooters and even supported the idea of reopening some psychiatric institutions, so people who may not need to go to jail or prison, but still need help, can get it. It's obviously still too early to tell how this all plays out exactly, but the fact Democrats and Republicans are both talking about more mental health resources, honestly, is just such a breath of fresh air in this conversation, which has gone on for far too long. For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, and motion designer Dakota Patillo, I'm Ryan Robertson for Straight Arrow News, signing off.